There's something dangerous about people who think money can erase consequences. The way they walk into a courtroom, head high, chin lifted, wearing arrogance like designer perfume. They believe the world bends for them. That rules are flexible. That truth is negotiable, as long as you can afford the right words. But not here. Not in this courtroom. When the polished doors swung open that morning, the tension was almost cinematic. A woman in a $1,000 outfit glided in as if she were walking into a gala, not a legal reckoning. Her diamond bracelet sparkled under the fluorescent lights, a symbol of everything she thought protected her. Across the room, an experienced female judge, silver hair, black robe, eyes that had seen every kind of deception, sat waiting, calm, silent, watching. The woman's lawyer whispered, "Just stay confident." Judges respect that. But confidence without truth is just performance. And this judge? She doesn't buy performances, because behind every luxury handbag and expensive defense, there's a story, and sometimes that story unravels faster than money can patch it up. By the time the gavel dropped, it wasn't wealth that spoke loudest, it was conscience. And when the judge delivered her final words, you could feel the entire room shift. She didn't just hand down a verdict, she shattered an illusion. This is the story of how luxury met honesty and unlost. The morning light bounced off polished marble floors as the courthouse. Doors opened to the sound of clicking heels. It wasn't the anxious, hesitant rhythm of someone walking toward judgment. It was confident, sharp, purposeful. Like the world should pause to listen. Her name was Vanessa Harland, and she looked like someone who'd never been told no in her entire life. The daughter of a real estate mogul, owner of 2 luxury boutiques, and the kind of woman who signed checks the way others signed autographs. Today, she wasn't dressed for court. She was dressed for conquest. A tailored cream suit hugged her frame, her diamond necklace catching the fluorescent lights as if trying to outshine the room itself. Behind her trailed her assistant, Maddie, clutching 2 phones, a water bottle, and a folder labeled Harlan versus Green. Vanessa didn't glance at her. She didn't need to. People like Maddie existed in her orbit to follow instructions, not to be acknowledged. As she entered the courtroom, Vanessa gave a small smirk, like this was all a formality. Just another meeting, another obstacle to be handled with charm and a signature. The judge's clerk motioned for her to take a seat at the defendant's table. Her attorney, Robert Chase, a man with a reputation for expensive suits and strategic apologies, leaned in. "Remember, Vanessa," he whispered, "you don't need to prove you're innocent. You just need to make them believe you didn't know." She smirked again. "Robert, please. I could do this without you." The plaintiff arrives. A few minutes later, the plaintiff walked in, Diane Green, a local interior designer. Her outfit was simple, her movements careful, but there was something powerful in her stillness, the kind of quiet confidence born from truth. Vanessa rolled her eyes. "She looks like she crawled out of an Etsy shop," she muttered. Robert shot her a warning glance. "Let me do the talking." Diane took her place, clutching a worn leather folder that had seen too many meetings and too many promises broken. Inside it were invoices, contracts, and text messages, all pieces of a puzzle that told the same story. Vanessa Harlan doesn't pay her bills. The case was simple. Or at least it should have been. Diane had renovated one of Vanessa's high-end properties, a penthouse overlooking the city skyline. She delivered everything: marble countertops, custom lighting, imported flooring. But when the final invoice came due, $42,000, Vanessa ghosted her. Weeks turned into months. Diane emailed, called, even showed up once at one of Vanessa's boutiques, only to be turned away by security. And now, here they were, under the cold fluorescent lights of justice. The judge enters. The sound of the door opening silenced the room. An experienced female judge entered, silver hair pinned neatly, black robe flowing with quiet authority. She moved like someone who didn't need to demand respect. She commanded it simply by existing. Everyone rose. When they sat, the judge looked down at her file. Vanessa Harland versus Diane Green. Alleged non-payment of contracted services totaling $42,000. Ms. Harland, you're the defendant. Vanessa gave a small smile. "That's correct, Your Honor." "And you are?" "Vanessa Harland," she said, emphasizing her name as if it carried prestige. "Owner of Harland Properties. I'm sure you've heard of it. The judge's eyes didn't move. No, Ms. Harland, I have not. But I have heard of contracts. Let's start there. A flicker of discomfort crossed Vanessa's face. Maddie, sitting behind her, noticed it. The first small crack in Vanessa's perfect armor. The setup of lies Robert stood. Your Honor, this is a simple misunderstanding. Between my client and Ms. Green, my client believed additional work was being completed and was waiting on final inspection before payment. The judge turned to Diane. Is that true? Diane shook her head. Your Honor, everything was completed 2 months before the inspection date. Ms. Harland approved the work herself via text message. She opened her folder and slid copies of the texts forward. The bailiff handed them up to the judge. The judge scanned the pages, her silver brows narrowing slightly. Ms. Harland, I see here that you texted, quote, "The apartment looks stunning. Exactly what I wanted," end quote. That was 4 months ago. Vanessa smiled faintly, leaning forward. Yes, Your Honor, but that was before I realized several items weren't imported as promised. Ms. Green misrepresented her materials. I couldn't in good faith pay for substandard work. Diane looked stunned. That's not true. The judge's gaze snapped to Vanessa. Do you have proof of that claim? Vanessa blinked. Excuse me? I said, the judge repeated evenly, do you have documentation, reports, or expert statements to back up that claim? Robert interjected smoothly. Your Honor, we have ongoing discussions with... The judge cut him off. Mr. Chase, ongoing discussions aren't evidence. If your client is accusing someone of deception, she needs proof. For the first time, Vanessa's composure faltered, cracks in the facade. The next 20 minutes were a slow unraveling. Every time Vanessa spoke, the judge cut through her words with precision. Every deflection, every attempt to redirect, met with logic sharper than any cross-examination. Diane presented receipts of all imported goods, verified, authenticated, and time-stamped. Her supplier had even provided statements confirming delivery. Robert tried to pivot. Your Honor, my client has been under tremendous stress managing multiple properties. There may have been miscommunication. The judge didn't look up. Stress doesn't void contracts, Mr. Chase. Ms. Harland had a legal obligation to pay upon completion, which she acknowledged. Miscommunication doesn't erase that. Maddie watched from behind, gripping her notepad. She had seen Vanessa get out of worse, a tax issue, a PR scandal. But this was different. This wasn't the media. This wasn't a business negotiation. This was truth, laid bare under oath, and Vanessa wasn't used to being powerless. The moment of arrogance, when the judge asked Vanessa to explain why she ignored multiple payment requests. Vanessa leaned back and smiled, with respect. Your Honor, I run a multi-million-dollar business. I don't personally handle every invoice that comes my way. People make mistakes. If Ms. Green had been more professional, this wouldn't be happening. The judge raised an eyebrow. You're saying this lawsuit is the result of her lack of professionalism? Exactly, Vanessa replied, confidence dripping from every word. The judge leaned forward slightly. And yet Ms. Green provided the service, completed the work, and sent the invoice, which your team ignored for 4 months. Is that professional? Vanessa hesitated. I don't think, the judge interrupted. You don't think what, Ms. Harland? That rules apply to you? The room went still. Even Robert stopped moving his pen. The judge continued, her tone steady but firm. You seem to believe your wealth or your schedule excuses you from responsibility. But this courtroom doesn't operate on status. It operates on evidence, and right now the evidence shows you're in breach of contract. Vanessa's smile faded entirely. The witness. Then came the surprise. Diane's lawyer called Maddie, Vanessa's assistant, as a witness. Maddie froze. Me? Vanessa turned sharply. What? No, she works for me. She can't testify. The judge's tone was calm. Ms. Harland, your assistant is not legally bound to your opinions. She may testify if she has relevant information. Maddie's hands trembled slightly as she took the stand. She avoided Vanessa's eyes. Ms. Lewis, Diane's attorney began, did you personally see the communications regarding payment? Yes, Maddie said quietly. And were there any internal emails suggesting the invoice was being withheld intentionally? Robert objected, speculative. The judge waved it off. Overruled. The witness may answer. Maddie's throat tightened. There were emails. Ms. Harland said to wait it out, because Ms. Green would eventually give up. Vanessa slammed her hand on the table. That's not true. The judge's gavel struck sharply. "Enough, Ms. Harland," Maddie continued, her voice shaking but firming with every word. She said small business owners always fold when they realize how expensive lawyers are. Gasps filled the courtroom. The judge turned to Vanessa, eyes narrowed. "Did you say that?" Vanessa looked cornered for the first time. I don't recall," the judge's tone sharpened. "Then let me remind you. Arrogance may cloud memory, but evidence clears it. Ms. Lewis, do you have copies of those emails?" Maddie nodded slowly. "Yes, I saved them." The fall when Maddie's emails were projected onto the courtroom screen, the words burned like fire. "Hold payment." "She's too small to fight it. Let her sue. We'll bury her in paperwork." The silence that followed was suffocating. Vanessa's perfect facade crumbled in real time, the mask slipping away, revealing something brittle underneath. Diane didn't look angry. She looked sad. The judge folded her hands. "Miss Harland, you've just given me a clear view of your character, not just your business practices. You knowingly withheld payment, manipulated another professional, and assumed your money would protect you." Vanessa tried to speak, but the judge's voice rose, firm and final. "This courtroom doesn't recognize wealth as a defense. It recognizes integrity. And right now, yours appears bankrupt." The pause before judgment. For a moment, no one moved. The air felt heavy, charged with something beyond tension, accountability. The judge took a breath, closed the file, and said, "We'll reconvene after lunch for closing arguments. But I suggest, Ms. Harland, you use that time to reflect on what you've done, not what you've lost." Vanessa sat frozen, her mind spiraling. For the first time in her life, she couldn't talk her way out. Couldn't charm, couldn't buy. Her empire of confidence was cracking, and across the aisle, Diane finally exhaled. Not in relief, but in quiet validation, because for once, truth had a voice louder than money. When the courtroom reconvened after lunch, the atmosphere had shifted. Gone was the smug energy of the morning, replaced with something thicker, heavier, like the air right before a storm breaks. Vanessa Harland walked back to her seat slower this time. The rhythm of her heels had lost its command. The sound now seemed smaller against the echoing tiles. She'd spent the recess pacing the courthouse corridor, fielding calls from her publicist, her attorney, and a furious business partner demanding to know what the hell was happening. "Handle it," Vanessa had said through gritted teeth. "That's what I pay people for." But deep down, she knew this wasn't something money could handle. Not this time. Across the aisle, Diane Green sat calmly, a quiet dignity in her stillness. Her hands rested atop the same worn folder, now reinforced with truth. She wasn't here for revenge. She was here for respect. The courtroom door opened again, and the experienced female judge returned. The room rose instinctively. Her eyes scanned the space, that reading faces like open books. When she sat, her gavel struck once, echoing like thunder. "Let's continue," she said simply. The opening strike Robert Chase stood, buttoning his jacket. His tone was smooth but nervous. "Your Honor, my client—" The judge lifted a hand. "Before you begin, Mr. Chase, I reviewed the new evidence submitted during recess, the assistant's emails. I trust you've seen them?" Robert nodded stiffly. "Yes, Your Honor," the judge leaned back. "Then I suggest you tread carefully. Integrity isn't a luxury item in this courtroom." A ripple of restrained laughter moved through the audience benches. Robert's jaw tightened. "Understood, Your Honor." He turned to Vanessa, whispering just low enough for the microphones to miss. "Say nothing unless I tell you." Vanessa didn't respond. Her eyes were fixed on the bench, on the woman who somehow had managed to turn her entire world inside out with nothing more than logic and presence. Robert began again. "Your Honor, while we don't dispute the emails were sent, my client's intent has been taken out of context. This was a business negotiation, not malice. Ms. Harland was acting on advice, exercising her right to ensure the project met contractual quality." The judge gave a small, unimpressed nod. "I see, so bury her in paperwork was part of a quality inspection." Robert's words faltered. "Merely an unfortunate phrasing." "Unfortunate indeed," the judge said, voice like glass. "Proceed." Diane takes the stand. It was Diane's turn. She walked to the witness stand, composed but visibly emotional. "Ms. Green," the judge began, "you may recount your experience." Keep it factual, please, Diane nodded. Yes, Your Honor. I met Miss Harlan through a mutual contact. She seemed polished, charming, and decisive. She said she wanted her new penthouse to be an expression of her power. Those were her words. Vanessa rolled her eyes slightly, muttering, I said presence, not power. The judge didn't even look at her. Continue, Ms. Green. Diane unfolded her story piece by piece, how she'd poured her savings into fulfilling the contract, personally overseeing shipments, making sure every tile and fixture was perfect. She paused. I'm a small business owner, Your Honor. I don't have investors or a big staff. That job was everything to me. When she stopped responding, I panicked. I thought maybe I did something wrong. I checked every invoice, every order, Ginny, all of it was perfect. Her voice cracked slightly. Then I saw the emails she sent her assistant. I realized it wasn't about business. It was about power. The courtroom was silent. Even Robert looked uneasy. The judge's eyes softened, but only slightly. Thank you, Miss Green. You may step down. The crossfire. Now it was Vanessa's turn again. Ms. Harland, the judge said evenly, you have the right to respond to these claims. Would you like to make a statement? Vanessa glanced at Robert. He hesitated, then gave a reluctant nod. She stood, smoothing her jacket. Your Honor, I never intended to harm Ms. Green. I've built everything I have from the ground up. I don't play games with my reputation. This entire situation has been blown out of proportion. Her voice gained confidence as she spoke. I manage millions of dollars in projects every year. Things slip through the cracks. I hired a lawyer, I trusted my team. If there was a delay, it wasn't personal. The judge tilted her head. So, when you wrote let her sue, what was that? Vanessa blinked. A figure of speech. A threat disguised as strategy, perhaps? The judge countered. Vanessa's jaw tightened. You're twisting my words. The judge leaned forward. Ms. Harland, your words twist themselves. The room stirred. Robert closed his eyes. This was slipping too fast. The judge continued. I've read your correspondence. You withheld payment intentionally, assuming Ms. Green lacked the resources to fight back. That's not a crack in management. That's calculated exploitation. Vanessa's face flushed. You don't know how my business operates. The judge's voice snapped like a whip. I don't need to. I know how accountability operates. The public unraveling by now. Word had spread. A local journalist from the Daily Tribune sat quietly in the back row, scribbling notes. Cameras weren't allowed, but stories had a way of leaking, especially ones that exposed privilege colliding with truth. When the judge called for a brief recess, Vanessa stormed out into the hallway. Maddie followed close behind, trembling. Why would you say those things? Vanessa hissed. You ruined everything. Maddie's voice was quiet but steady. I told the truth, Vanessa. The truth? Vanessa scoffed. You're fired. Effective immediately. Maddie exhaled, something between relief and sorrow. You already fired me the moment you made me lie? Vanessa froze. For a long moment, they stood in silence, the echo of the courtroom door behind them like a closing chapter. Maddie turned and walked away, her spine straighter than it had ever been. Back in session, when court resumed, the judge wasted no time. We're nearing closing statements. Before we proceed, I'd like to remind everyone that this courtroom represents fairness, not status. Her eyes moved from Diane to Vanessa. The evidence tells a clear story. But before I make my ruling, both parties will have one final opportunity to speak. Diane's lawyer stood first. Your Honor, this isn't just about $42,000. It's about the principle that no one, no matter how wealthy or connected, is above accountability. Ms. Green's livelihood was jeopardized because someone decided her effort didn't deserve respect. Then it was Robert's turn. He adjusted his tie, his voice carrying that practiced calm. Your Honor, while my client acknowledges certain poor decisions, we must remember intent. Ms. Harland has contributed significantly to this city through business and philanthropy. A ruling against her could have consequences for her employees, her reputation, and her future contributions. The judge gave a long pause before responding. Consequences are not selective, Mr. Chase. They visit everyone, rich or poor. The emotional collapse. When Vanessa stood again, her voice was quieter, almost trembling beneath the surface of practiced poise. I've built everything I have by myself, she said. I don't come from money. People look at me and think I had it easy, but they don't see the sacrifices. The judge listened. And yet, When someone else worked hard for you, you refuse to pay them. How do you reconcile that? Vanessa's lip quivered. Because I thought I deserved better. The judge's tone softened slightly. And now, for the first time, Vanessa's mask cracked completely. Her voice broke. Now I just want this to go away. The judge nodded slowly. It will. But not the way you think. The closing moments, the gavel struck softly. We'll adjourn until tomorrow morning. I'll deliver the verdict then. Vanessa sank back into her seat. Her phone buzzed with messages, reporters, business partners, even her father. She ignored them all. In front of her, Diane quietly gathered her folder. No celebration. No gloating. Just calm closure. As she passed Vanessa's table on her way out, she stopped briefly. You could have just paid the bill, she said gently. Would have cost you less than all this. Vanessa looked up at her, eyes red, lips pressed tight. For a second, she seemed like she wanted to say something human, something real. But pride swallowed it. Diane nodded once, then left. That night, Vanessa sat alone in her penthouse, staring at the city lights. The silence was deafening. On the coffee table lay her court folder, half open. The emails, the evidence, the printed text messages she once dismissed as nonsense. Her reflection in the glass was harsh. The woman who stared back wasn't powerful. She was small, fragile, trapped inside a life built on control and vanity. Her phone buzzed again. Another call from Robert. She didn't answer. Instead, she poured herself a drink and whispered under her breath, "It's just money." But it wasn't. It never was. It was about the one thing money couldn't buy, credibility. And now even that was gone. The judge reflects late that night, the judge sat at her desk reviewing notes. Her clerk peeked in. "Long day, huh?" The judge smiled faintly. "Long life," she replied. The clerk gestured at Vanessa's case file. "You think people like her ever learn?" The judge's expression was unreadable. Some do. But most need to lose something valuable before they remember what value really means. She closed the file gently. And that's what tomorrow's verdict will teach her. The courtroom was full the next morning. Journalists, spectators, even a few curious local business owners. Word had spread quickly. The wealthy developer who thought she could outsmart the system was about to face a reckoning. The sound of murmurs filled the air until the experienced female judge entered. Her silver hair shimmered faintly under the fluorescent lights, her black robe cutting a silhouette of quiet command. The moment she sat, the room went dead silent. "Court is now in session," she announced. "We will now deliver judgment in the matter of Green versus Harland." Vanessa sat stiffly, her perfectly pressed suit from the day before replaced with something darker. Navy, understated, almost apologetic. She hadn't slept much. You could see it in the way her eyes avoided everyone else's, especially Diane's. Diane sat calmly, hands folded in her lap, her worn folder by her side. She wasn't smiling. She didn't need to. The truth had already done the talking, the judge's opening words. The judge adjusted her glasses and began reading from her notes. This case, at its core, is not about money. It's about accountability, the idea that when two parties agree to something, that agreement means something. Her eyes lifted toward Vanessa. "Ms. Harland, you signed a contract. You received the service. You acknowledged its completion. Then, instead of paying for it, you chose manipulation over honesty." Vanessa swallowed hard, her fingers twitching slightly against the table. The judge continued, voice calm but sharp as glass. "When confronted, you relied on intimidation, delay tactics, and deliberate misinformation, as proven by your own assistant's testimony and written correspondence. The emails presented are not only unethical, but they demonstrate intent to deceive." Robert shifted uncomfortably beside her, whispering something that Vanessa ignored. The judge paused, letting the words hang in the air. Then she added, "Wealth does not shield anyone from consequence. In fact, the more privilege one has, the greater their responsibility to act with fairness." Her tone hardened. "And yet, Ms. Harland, you acted as though the world owed you exemption." The turning point as the judge spoke. Vanessa's composure visibly cracked. Her lips pressed together in a thin line. Her breathing quickened. "Your Honor," she said finally, voice trembling just slightly, "I was misled by my advisors. I never meant—" The judge lifted a hand. "Stop, right there." The room froze. Ms. Harland, what you meant doesn't erase what you did. Intent is only as noble as the action that follows it. And in your case, every action you took was rooted in arrogance. Vanessa blinked, her throat tightening. I understand that now. The judge leaned forward. Do you? Or do you simply understand that you got caught? Vanessa's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Diane watched quietly, her expression unreadable. She wasn't savoring this. She wasn't vengeful. She simply wanted acknowledgement. And in this moment, it was arriving, piece by piece, through the judge's words, the judge's crossfire. The judge turned her attention to Diane. Ms. Green, you handled yourself with professionalism and patience throughout this ordeal. You pursued justice, not revenge. That distinction matters. Then back to Vanessa. I've presided over hundreds of cases, Ms. Harland, but arrogance mixed with ignorance always looks the same. Expensive on the outside, hollow within. You've built a life around control, but when faced with truth, you unraveled because you couldn't buy your way out. The room was still except for the faint scratch of a reporter's pen. The judge's voice dropped slightly, the tone now more reflective than punitive. You remind me of so many who walk into this courtroom believing money is power. But true power, Ms. Harland, comes from integrity, and you've bankrupted yours. Vanessa's eyes brimmed with tears she didn't want to show. Her voice, when it came, was a whisper. What happens now? The verdict. The judge straightened in her seat. Here's what happens. First, the court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Ms. Green, in the amount of $42,000 plus court costs and interest. Payment is to be made in full within 30 days. Vanessa closed her eyes, the number ringing in her head like a sentence. Second, the judge continued, given the defendant's documented intent to delay and manipulate payment, the court imposes an additional penalty of $5,000 for bad faith conduct. Robert's head snapped up. Your Honor, that's... The judge's gaze cut him short. Do not finish that sentence, Mr. Chase. You're lucky I'm not referring this to the state attorney for fraud investigation. Robert sank back into his chair. Third, the judge said, now addressing Vanessa directly. This court recommends that Ms. Harland's business license be reviewed by the local Commerce Board. No one who weaponizes power should operate unchecked. Vanessa's breath caught audibly. Your Honor, please, that could destroy everything I've worked for. The judge's tone softened, but only slightly. Perhaps, Ms. Harland, it will give you the opportunity to rebuild something better. The moment of truth. There was silence. Then the judge leaned forward, her expression unreadable, a mix of authority and disappointment. You know, Ms. Harland, people like you always fascinate me. You have access to every advantage. You could have turned this into a story of mentorship, of generosity, of respect. But instead you made it about control. Her voice deepened. You didn't just steal money. You stole dignity, the right of someone else to be valued for their work. And that's something far more expensive than $42,000. The courtroom felt smaller now, as if everyone's breath was being held in the same moment. Vanessa lowered her head. You're right, she said, her voice breaking. You're absolutely right. The judge nodded once. Finally, something honest. The emotional fallout as the gavel struck, signaling the case closed, the spell broke. People began to murmur softly, some shaking their heads, others whispering words like justice and finally. Vanessa didn't move. Her world felt like it had shrunk to the size of that wooden desk. The hum of conversation blurred into nothing. She stared straight ahead, eyes unfocused. Then, a hand touched her arm. Diane stood beside her, hesitant but calm. It's over, she said quietly. You can start over from here. Vanessa looked up, her eyes glassy. You're not angry. Diane shook her head. Anger wastes energy. I'd rather put mine into my next project. For a moment, Vanessa's lips trembled into something that almost resembled gratitude, then faltered. I don't know how to fix what I did. Diane nodded. You start by paying what you owe. She turned and walked away. Her steps were quiet but sure, the sound of integrity leaving the room. Outside the courthouse doors swung open to blinding afternoon light. Reporters crowded around, microphones flashing like cameras at a red carpet. But this wasn't a premiere. It was exposure. Ms. Harland, any comment on the verdict? Will you appeal the decision? Do you admit wrongdoing? Vanessa kept her head down, shielding her face. No comment, she whispered. Her driver opened the car door, but she paused, glancing back at the courthouse. Through the glass, she could still see the judge, her silhouette framed in the courtroom window, already onto the next case, calm, steady, unmoved. For the first time, Vanessa understood what true power looked like, and it wasn't hers. The judge's reflection back inside, the judge sat quietly at her bench. Her clerk, gathering files, spoke softly. "That was intense," the judge smiled faintly. "It's never just about money. It's about who people become when they think no one's watching." The clerk paused. "Do you think she'll change?" The judge closed the file. "She might. Or she might double down. But either way, she'll remember this because losing money stings, but losing face? That lasts." She looked toward the door one last time. "Justice isn't always loud," she said quietly. "Sometimes it just needs to be clear." Epilogue moment. That night, as rain streaked the city windows, Vanessa sat alone again. Her lawyer had sent the payment paperwork. The press had moved on to the next scandal. But something lingered, the judge's words echoing like a melody she couldn't forget. "You didn't just steal money. You stole dignity." Vanessa typed a short message on her phone, hesitated, then hit send. It was to Diane. "I've sent the payment." "I'm sorry for everything," Diane replied minutes later. "Thank you. That's a start." Vanessa stared at the message for a long time before setting her phone down. For the first time in years, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Humility. The rain had turned to mist by the time Vanessa Harlan stepped out of her car in front of her penthouse building. Her driver offered an umbrella, but she shook her head. For the first time in years, she didn't mind being seen without control. The city skyline reflected in puddles, fractured, distorted, just like her life had become. When she reached her door, she hesitated. The elevator lobby smelled faintly of expensive perfume and new marble, reminders of everything she once believed defined her. Now it just felt hollow. Inside, her penthouse was immaculate, every cushion fluffed, every surface gleaming. But the silence? That was unbearable. The faint echo of her heels through the apartment sounded almost mocking now. The same rhythm that had once meant dominance now felt like judgment. The hollow victory. Her. Phone lit up with notifications. Breaking. Local business tycoon loses court case to small designer. Judge delivers scathing rebuke. Integrity can't be bought. Dozens of headlines. All carrying her name. Vanessa Harlan, the woman who thought she was untouchable, exposed. Her father had called earlier. She hadn't answered. He'd left a message, short and cold. "You embarrassed the family, Vanessa. Fix it, fix it." That phrase had always been her weapon. A problem? Fix it with money. A scandal? Fix it with influence. A mistake? Fix it with silence. But not this time. She poured herself a glass of wine, but her hand shook too much to hold it steady. The liquid sloshed onto the counter, a red stain spreading like guilt. For the first time, she let herself cry. Not the quiet, cinematic kind, but the kind that comes from deep, aching realization. The kind you can't hide from anymore. A visit from conscience. Hours later, there was a knock at her door. She ignored it once, twice. The third time, it came with a voice she didn't expect. "Vanessa." "It's me, Maddie." Vanessa froze. She opened the door slowly, her eyes red. Maddie stood there, coat-soaked, holding a small paper bag and 2 cups of coffee. "Why are you here?" Vanessa asked quietly. Maddie offered a faint smile. "Because you looked like someone who'd forget to eat." Vanessa almost laughed, but it came out more like a sigh. "You shouldn't be here." "I fired you," Maddie shrugged. "You did. But I'm still human. And I figured, maybe so are you." The words landed like a punch, gentle but true. They sat in silence for a while. Coffee steam curled between them like a fragile peace offering. Vanessa finally spoke. "Do you hate me?" Maddie hesitated. "I hated what you did." "But I don't hate you." Vanessa looked away. "Everyone else does." "Then maybe that's your sign to start over," Maddie said softly. "Do something that doesn't revolve around proving you're better than everyone else." Vanessa's eyes met hers, tired, hollow, but searching. "I don't even know who I am without all this." Maddie smiled faintly. "Maybe that's the point." The first step 2 weeks later, the payment cleared. Diane received the full amount, plus interest and penalties. Her email notification popped up mid-morning as she was sketching plans for a new client's living room. She didn't smile right away. She just stared at the confirmation for a while, letting it sink in. It wasn't about the money. It was about closure. That evening, she received another message. Short, unexpected, from Vanessa Harlan. Subject: thank you. You didn't have to be kind in court. You could have humiliated me. But you didn't. I won't forget that. Diane sat back in her chair, rereading the email. Then she typed her reply to Vanessa Harlan. Humility is hard. Keep practicing. She hit send and smiled. Not out of spite, but out of peace. A public reckoning. Meanwhile, Vanessa faced the fallout. Her luxury brand sales had dropped 30%. Investors pulled out of a real estate project. Social media flooded with clips from the trial transcript. The judge's words turned into viral quotes about accountability and pride. But something strange happened. Instead of hiding, Vanessa made a statement. No PR filters, no ghost-written apologies. Just her. Raw, unpolished, real. She recorded a video on her phone. No makeup, no lighting, no editing. My name is Vanessa Harlan. I thought money made me untouchable. I was wrong. I disrespected someone who worked hard, and I've spent weeks realizing that integrity doesn't come with a price tag. If you've ever thought you were above someone, learn from me. You're not, she posted it, then turned off her phone. Within hours, the video spread. People called it the redemption statement. Others called it too late. But a surprising number called it real. For the first time, the comments weren't filtered through image consultants or brand strategists. They were human. And that somehow mattered more than reputation ever did. The judge's final reflection, in her chambers, the experienced female judge read a printed article on Vanessa's statement. Her clerk entered quietly, holding a fresh stack of case files. Looks like you made an impression, he said with a small grin. The judge didn't look up. Justice isn't about impression, she said softly. It's about correction, he nodded. Still, feels good to see someone actually change. The judge allowed herself a rare smile. Sometimes a fall is the only way people learn how high they were standing. She placed the article aside. Next case. And just like that, justice moved on, unglamorous, uncelebrated, but unwavering. 1 year later. A year later, the story resurfaced. Not as a scandal, but as a lesson. Vanessa had sold one of her boutiques, closed another, and started a nonprofit called the Green Line Foundation, dedicated to funding small women-owned businesses who'd been shortchanged by powerful clients. At the launch event, Diane was there, invited personally. She wore a simple navy dress, her hair tied back. Vanessa approached her nervously. Thank you for coming, she said. Diane smiled. I was curious if you'd actually do it. Vanessa gestured around the small crowd of entrepreneurs, artists, and creators. Turns out, losing everything teaches you what's worth building. They shared a quiet moment, two women on opposite ends of a story that had changed them both. Vanessa added softly, You were right. Humility is hard. But it's freeing, Diane nodded. It usually is. Cameras flashed, capturing the unlikely reunion. The internet would later call it full circle justice. But for both women, it wasn't about that. It was simply human closure. Final scene later that night, Vanessa stood by the window of her new, smaller apartment. No marble floors. No skyline penthouse view. Just a modest city street and the hum of passing cars. She looked out at the lights, each one a reminder of lives happening beyond her own. She whispered quietly, almost to herself, maybe losing it all was the best thing that ever happened to me. And somewhere across town, in a cozy studio filled with fabric samples and design sketches, Diane smiled to herself as she watched the same video clip, because for once, justice didn't just win, it transformed.